You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Sports fans, welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I have to start by recapping the Cheez-It Bowl, a fantastic game between Oklahoma State and the U. And I'll be the first person to admit it. I was dead wrong about this game. I thought the Hurricanes would win. I didn't think Spencer Sanders would have a good game. I thought Tylan Wallace would be a huge factor. I thought Dylan Stoner would have a big game. I'll be the first person to admit I had never heard of Brennan Presley. I think there are a bunch of Oklahoma State fans that had never heard of Brennan Presley. Here's a freshman who's made most of his impact on special teams, and even then, he didn't set the world on fire. He only had 5 kick returns and 4 punt returns. Before yesterday, he only had 1 catch for 7 yards. Hallelujah. He got a handoff that he ran in for a 9-yard touchdown. No one could have seen this game coming from Presley. Everyone's focusing on Sanders for the game he had, 27 for 40 for 305 yards and 4 touchdowns. I'm more interested in Presley. Oklahoma State made a concerted effort to get the ball to him early. In the first quarter, he had 2 touchdowns. Going into that game, he only had 1 catch the whole season. Forget touchdown catches. Total catches. I thought it was a brilliant job by Mike Gundy. Everyone's focusing on Wallace. Everyone's focusing on Stoner. You know what? We have this young freshman in Presley who we're high on. No one knows about him. Let's turn him loose and see what he can do. Now, I'm not minimizing what Sanders did. Look, I thought he was inconsistent all year. I had no faith in him going up against the Hurricanes. With the lights on bright, I didn't see that going well for him. But give him credit. The guy was as close to perfect as you could expect. He got everyone involved that you wanted him to get involved. Presley, 6 catches for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tay Martin, 6 catches for 73 yards. Wallace, 6 catches for 45 yards. He only played the first half. And I'll get into that in a minute. But I just want to tell you that Dylan Stoner had 5 catches for 43 yards and a touchdown. If you had told me that a Cowboys wide receiver was going to catch 3 touchdown passes, I'd have said, yeah, that sounds like something Tylan Wallace can do. That's within his skill set. It was Presley. A nobody. Brennan Presley could walk into any bar in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and no one would recognize him. He picked a fantastic game to show the world what he can do. He's only a freshman. he's going to get better and better as he goes through college. I'm going to be very excited to see what he can do going forward. Also for the Cowboys, Trey Sterling had a big game. 9 tackles, half a sack. I just wanted to shout him out. Now, a lot of people were upset at Wallace for only playing the first half. Especially after the way the first half unfolded. Oklahoma State immediately jumps out to a big 21-0 lead. Everyone's thinking this is going to be a blowout. The U has no chance. We can turn this game off and watch basketball. Then the Hurricanes come back. They scored 10 points in the second quarter. 21-10 at the half. That's not an insurmountable deficit. The U was going to get the ball back to start the second half. They end up kicking a field goal on the opening drive. They're down 8 at this point. 1 score a game. To not see Tylan Wallace out there, yeah, it's upsetting. I get that. And look, I don't like when players sit out bowl games. Do I understand the decision? Yes, I understand not wanting to risk an injury in advance of the NFL draft. You just have this one game to get through, and then I can prepare for the draft. It's very easy to look past that one game. To just say, you know what, I played a full season, I have enough tape, I'm not going to risk it, I'm going pro now. I get it. I don't begrudge the players who do it. But I still think it's wrong. For starters, I think it can hurt them to sit out. While you'll definitely stay healthy, how many players have seen their stocks skyrocket after a big bowl game? Look at what happened with Zach Wilson. This guy tears up UCF in the Boca Raton Bowl, and now there's a real chance that he can be the second overall pick. If Wilson had a bad game against the Knights, it's not even a debate if he should go second overall. Daniel Jones a couple years ago tore up his opponent in his last bowl game. That helped his stock a lot. Also, there is something to be said about abandoning your teammates. At the end of the day, this is what you're playing for. You're playing for a bowl game. All those September games, October games, November games, they're all to get into a bowl game. Now at the culmination of this season, you're going to say, screw you guys, I'm going pro? I don't like it. I understand not wanting to risk an injury. I get it. It's not like in my scouting report of Tylan Wallace I'm going to have as a negative, this guy sat out the Cheez-It Bowl. No. But I'll say this, a dominant performance would have really helped him. If Wallace had been the one to catch 3 touchdown passes and finish with 118 receiving yards, we'd be talking about this guy as a possible top 10 draft pick. I understand that Wallace needs to look out for himself at the end of the day. I get it. But I understand why the fans were upset. I don't begrudge Wallace. I do disagree with the decision, but I understand why he made it. And I don't begrudge the fans for getting upset at him. Now, we'll probably never know how much De'Aaron King's injury influenced Wallace's decision, but I think it's a fair bet to say that it influenced it to some degree. King got off to a rocky start in the first quarter. Like I said, the U was outscored 21-0, but then in the second quarter, he started being the De'Aaron King that we've all come to know and love. He finished the game with a 10-for-13 passing line, threw for 113 yards and a touchdown. He had 8 carries for 18 yards. Give the Cowboys credit. They did a great job of stifling his legs. It was at the expense of letting Cameron Harris and Donald Chaney kill him, but they neutralized King on the ground. Then, just as Miami is getting rolling, you see N'Kosi Perry take over. Immediately your heart sinks if you're a fan of the U. It's nothing against Perry. He's not a bad player. He's just not De'Aaron King. Do they have a similar skill set? Yes. But are they equally talented? No. King is the better player. Now you've got to give Perry credit. He came in and played really well. Completed 19 of his 34 passes for 228 yards and 2 touchdowns. He kept the U in this ball game right until the bitter end. But then towards the end of the game, the final 5 minutes or so, after Perry threw the touchdown pass to Mike Harley, who had a big game, 8 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown, he just couldn't seal the deal. King probably would have been able to seal the deal. I mean, after the touchdown to Harley, Oklahoma State goes 3-and-out. It's 37-34 at this point. Realistically, all you have to do is get into field goal range, and one of the best kickers in the nation, Jose Borregales, will drill the field goal. Instead, the U goes 3-and-out. What does Oklahoma State do after that? 3-and-out again. 3 minutes and 14 seconds left in the game. The U has the ball at their own 30 with 1 timeout. They only got 1 first down. Nice job by Perry in getting the ball to Brevin Jordan, who had a big game. 8 catches for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns. Let me tell you, he's going to be a 3rd-round draft pick. But that was it. You've got to think that King would have been able to seal the deal. Maybe the Hurricanes wouldn't have won. Once you get into overtime, anything can happen, but I think it's a fair bet to say that King would have gotten them into field goal range. And Borregales is automatic. Also, just one other thing when it comes to the U. Will Mallory, the backup tight end, had 4 catches for 67 yards. He was really good. So was Corey Couch and Bubba Bolden. Is this a tough loss for the U? Yeah, no question. My buddy Mike was really upset after this loss. I get it. You had every opportunity to win this game, and you couldn't. But you still had a good season. You ended up going 8-3. I understand for the U, a lot of their fans, it's national title or bust. It's been too long since the Howard Schnellenberger and Jimmy Johnson days. I get that, but you still went 8-3. You played a really good Cowboys team, really close. I wouldn't get too bent out of shape about this loss. Moving on now to the other bowl game. The bowl game that I nailed. The Alamo Bowl, Texas. Absolutely destroying Colorado. 55-23. Here's what made this win all the more impressive. Sam Ehlinger, the guy who really needed to show up for this decimated Longhorns team, got hurt with a shoulder injury. He finished the game by completing 10 of 16 passes for 160 yards and a touchdown. They bring in this kid, Casey Thompson. No one's ever heard of Casey Thompson. No one expects the Longhorns to do anything crazy with him under center. They're just going to give the ball to Bijan Robinson a lot. He had killed Colorado all game. Let him continue to run roughshod. Instead, Tom Herman, who's gotten a lot of heat, I don't think it's fair, but he's still gotten a lot of heat, turned Thompson loose, and he looked like the second coming of Vince Young. He completed 8 of his 10 passes for 170 yards and 4 touchdowns. Half of his completions in this game were for touchdowns. Joshua Moore had a huge game. 5 catches for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kelvontae Dixon only had 1 catch. He made it count, though. 73 yards and a touchdown. Robinson was nothing short of electric. 10 carries for 183 yards and a touchdown. And through the air, 2 catches for 37 yards and 2 touchdowns. Colorado couldn't stop Texas to save their lives. The reality is, Colorado just isn't as talented as Texas. That's what I said yesterday, and it's the truth. Sam Neuer was abysmal. Completed just 8 of his 23 passes for 101 yards and 2 picks. Brendan Lewis came in and looked solid. Completed 6 of his 10 passes for 95 yards. He had 9 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown. But at the end of the day, there's no way that a freshman quarterback is going to come in cold and beat this Texas team. In Texas? That's not going to happen. Jarek Broussard, the guy who really needed to show up for the Buffaloes, didn't. He had 27 carries for 82 yards. That's a little over 3 yards per carry. He did have 2 touchdowns. Good for him, but he also lost a fumble. That's not what Colorado needed if they were going to win this game. They needed more performances like Dimitri Stanley's. 4 catches for 86 yards. And Carson Wells, too, the guy who I told you about. 6 tackles and 2 sacks. Him and Darion Rakestraw showed up defensively for the Buffaloes. Everyone else, forget about it. People were getting on Herman for not giving the ball more to Bijan Robinson. Guys, you scored 55 points. What Herman did worked. What are you getting upset about? Come on, that's ridiculous. If Thompson looked bad, yeah, hand the ball off more. But, like I said, the guy looked like the second coming of Colt McCoy. I understand that Herman gets a lot of heat. Texas hasn't been in national title consideration, and that's all anyone cares about when it comes to the Longhorns. But I think he's done a fine job there. I like Herman. I really do. Alright, now it's time to preview today's 2 bowl games. There were supposed to be 3, but the Music City Bowl between Missouri and Iowa was canceled because Missouri had a COVID outbreak. So instead, we just have Wisconsin versus Wake Forest in the Mayo Bowl and Florida versus Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. I've spoken about Wisconsin before. I did like them. I thought they had a solid group. Pro-style offense run by Paul Chryst. Very, very smart coach. Has been very successful at Wisconsin. But after getting off to a great start against Illinois and Michigan, Wisconsin fell off a cliff. They lost to Northwestern, Indiana, and Iowa. They only scored 20 points in those 3 losses. If you'll recall, I really liked Graham Mertz. And I still like Mertz. I still think Mertz has talent. He's completed just under 61% of his passes, 8 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Look, I understand that he's not the most exciting quarterback in the nation, but I still see some talent there. I like that he's running a pro-style offense. But the reality is, Wisconsin has disappointed. Jake Ferguson is by far and away their best pass catcher. He's a really good tight end. One of the best tight ends in the nation. But he only has 29 catches for 284 yards and 4 touchdowns. Be honest. Is that the kind of production you want from your number 1 pass catcher? Do you really want Jalen Berger and Garrett Groshek? Hell, I'll throw in Nakia Watson too. You want those guys leading the charge on the ground? I mean, come on, that's not going to work. I like Mertz. I really do. I like Paul Chryst. I really do. I do think that they are going to be successful together. It just didn't happen this year. Defensively, Wisconsin has a couple players that you need to key in on. Leo Chenal and Isaiah Loudermilk. But other than that, they're just a very cohesive unit. Very similar to BYU. A great defense with no obvious superstar playmakers. Wisconsin this year has given up 15.7 points per game. That's the 6th best mark in the nation. But they're going to have their hands full with this Demon Deacons team. A Demon Deacons team that scored 37 points per game. That's the 19th best mark in the nation. I'm not the biggest Dave Clawson fan in the world, but this is a good team. Sam Hartman is a solid quarterback. He's thrown for just under 2,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, only 1 interception. On the ground, Wake Forest is going to be without Kenneth Walker III, but that's okay because they have Christian Beal still. I understand that Walker has 13 rushing touchdowns, but Beal has averaged just under 5.5 yards per carry. They complement each other really well, but Beal will be able to carry the load. Jaquari Roberson, Donovan Green, Taylor Morin, and A.T. Perry are all solid pass catchers. Defensively, Wake Forest does have some playmakers. Carlos Basham Jr., Miles Fox, Nick Anderson, Jasir Taylor, Kalen Carson. This is a solid Wake Forest team. This is a good assemblage of talent. I don't think Wisconsin matches up that well with them from a talent perspective. Give me Wake Forest. Now on to the first of the New Year's 6 bowl games, the Cotton Bowl, Florida versus Oklahoma. This is going to be a fantastic game. The New Year's 6 is starting off with a bang. We all know who Florida is led by. He's going to hear his name called in the first round of the NFL draft. He's my pick to win the Heisman. It's Kyle Trask. The guy has had a sensational season. He's completed just under 70% of his passes for over 4,100 yards, 43 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He's elevated guys like Kadarius Toney, Kyle Pitts, Trayvon Grimes, Malik Davis, Justin Shorter, to heights that wouldn't be achievable without a quarterback like Trask. Every year he's been in college, he's gotten better. Didn't get a lot of playing time his sophomore year. His junior year, he looked good, he didn't look great. This year, he's been one of the best players in the nation. I'm telling you, he's my pick to win the Heisman. Defensively, Florida has a few good playmakers. Zachary Carter, Ventrell Miller, Brenton Cox, Chris Bogle, Sean Davis, and Kaiir Elam. Let me tell you, I love watching Elam play. This guy has 11 pass deflections this year and 2 interceptions. One of the most underrated players in the nation. As for Oklahoma, they have the 9th best offense in the nation in terms of points per game. They put up 41.8 points per game. But they really don't have any superstars. Spencer Rattler isn't a superstar. TJ Pledger isn't. Ramondre Stevenson isn't. Marvin Mims is really good, but he's not a superstar. Theo Weiss and Austin Stogner aren't superstars. This is the genius of Lincoln Riley, the way he's constructing these offensive game plans. It's insane. If he wants to make the jump to the pros, he will have no shortage of teams interested in him. Hopefully the Jets would be at the top of that list. Defensively, the Sooners are very underrated. They've only given up 21.9 points per game. That's the 31st best mark in the nation. Nick Bonito, Isaiah Thomas, Ronnie Perkins, Trey Norwood, and Trey Brown have all had really good seasons, but no one talks about them because when you think of a Lincoln Riley-led team, you think of the offense. But I don't expect this offense to be able to keep up with Florida's offense. The Sooners do have a really good defense, but they're not going to be able to stop Kyle Trask. They're not going to be able to stop Kyle Pitts. They're not going to be able to stop Kadarius Toney. Give me Florida. My buddy Eric would like that. Alright, so since this is the last show of 2020, I want to do something special. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to preview the remaining 5 of the New Year's 6. I'll start with the CFP games, and then I'll go chronologically. So that means I'm going to start with the Rose Bowl, Alabama versus Notre Dame. Yet again, it's another stacked Crimson Tide team. You thought that maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't be as dominant. No Tua, no Judy, no Ruggs. Instead, Nick Saban just plugs in a few guys here and there, and they're the best team in the nation. Mac Jones has had a sensational season. He's completed 76.5% of his passes for over 3,700 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. There are some people saying that he's a late first rounder. I probably would lean more towards the second round for him. I don't like the fact that he's a one-year wonder. If you watch him play, you can tell that he's being made better by his elite supporting cast. He's not making the skill position guys look better. The skill position guys are making him look better. Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, and John Mechie. Smith has been so good that he's a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. I don't think he's going to win it. In fact, I don't think he deserves to win it. I'd have a tough time giving the Heisman Trophy to a wide receiver. But Smith has had a fantastic season. 98 catches for 1,511 yards and 17 touchdowns. I understand why he's a finalist. I don't think he should win it, but he deserves to be a finalist. The thing that Alabama does great that no one talks about is getting to the quarterback. Will Anderson has 7 sacks this year. Chris Allen and Christian Barmore both have 6 sacks. The reality is this is just as good a Crimson Tide team as Nick Saban has ever had. But they're going to have their hands full with Notre Dame. Notre Dame is here for a reason. I saw some people say that after they got blown out against Clemson, that's it. They don't deserve to be in the CFP. No, because they beat Clemson earlier in the season. I understand without Trevor Lawrence, but they still beat Clemson. That's still on their ledger. You can't wipe it out just because Clemson didn't have their starting quarterback playing. A lot of teams have overcome injuries this year. It's no excuse. Offensively, the only guy who you really need to worry about from the Fighting Irish is Kyren Williams. He has over 1,000 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns. Ian Book is good, not great. Javon McKinley is good, not great. Ben Skowronek is good, not great. Notre Dame's calling card is their defense. Adet Okonbo Ogundeji, Isaiah Foskey, Dalen Hayes, Myron Tagovailoa Amosa, Ovie Ogofo, Sean Crawford, Kurt Hinish, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who I could really see going to the Jets, Drew White, Nick McLeod, Clarence Lewis, Kyle Hamilton. This is an NFL caliber defense, make no mistake about it. Don't let the blowout by Trevor Lawrence cloud your judgment. This is a Notre Dame team with a bunch of NFL caliber players. Owusu-Koramoah is going to go in the late first round, maybe early second round. Wouldn't mind him on the Jets for a second. But the reality is Notre Dame just doesn't have the talent to keep up with Alabama offensively. Will they limit Alabama? Alabama Alabama this year is averaging 49.7 points per game. That's the second best mark in the nation. They are not going to score 49 points against this Notre Dame defense. I think their ceiling is in the low to mid 30s. But I don't see Ian Book, Kyron Williams, Ben Skowronek, or Javon McKinley stepping up and scoring 35 to 40 points to beat Alabama. I'm going to be very interested in the coaching matchup here. Nick Saban versus Brian Kelly. Two of the best coaches in the nation. But I think Saban's going to have the edge. I have to go with Alabama. Now on to the Sugar Bowl. A game that I am going to be very invested in because my future quarterback may be playing in it. That doesn't just apply to Justin Fields. I still think there's a chance that the Jets can trade up and get Trevor Lawrence. Is it a remote possibility? Yes, but stranger things have happened. I'm not going to go too far into that here. I'm going to save it for the Jets offseason preview. Truthfully, I don't think I need to say much about Clemson's offense. Everyone has been singing Trevor Lawrence's praises all year. There's a reason that this guy is going to be the first overall pick. It is because he can do things on the football field that normal people can't. Quick release, great footwork, works through his progressions perfectly, cannon for an arm. He is the best quarterback prospect we've had since Andrew Luck. There's a reason that there were so many Jets fans rooting against their team. I don't support that, but I understand wanting Trevor Lawrence. No one wanted Trevor Lawrence more than me. Looking past Lawrence, which I know is hard to do, Clemson has some really talented skill position players. Travis Etienne has 882 rushing yards this year to go with 13 touchdowns. He also has 44 catches to go along with 524 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. So he has over 1,400 scrimmage yards and 15 total touchdowns. This guy is going to be a late first-round draft pick. He does everything you want an NFL running back to do. Amari Rodgers and Cornell Powell make up one of the best wide receiver duos in the nation. Braden Galloway is a solid tight end. And defensively, Clemson is just stacked. Everyone focuses on the offense. Their defense has only given up 17.5 points per game. That's the 11th best mark in the nation. I'll rapid fire through the names really quickly. Miles Murphy, Trenton Simpson, Bale Inspector, KJ Henry, Levante Bentley, Xavier Thomas, Jake Venables, Brian Breesy, Reagan Upshaw, Justin Maskell, Tyler Davis, Nolan Turner, Andrew Booth Jr., Fred Davis II, Mario Goodrich. I named more guys than you can have on the field at once. Everyone that I just mentioned is good enough to be the best player on a really good college team. Clemson has all these guys together. This is going to be an incredibly stout test for Justin Fields. Fields has folded in big games before. The game against Clemson last year, he threw 2 interceptions after only throwing 1 interception the whole 2019 season. This year, his 2 worst games were against Indiana and Northwestern. Indiana, when they played OSU, was the 9th best team in the nation. That was a battle to see who would represent the Eastern Division of the Big Ten in their conference title game. Fields did not play well. Completed just 60% of his passes. He threw 3 interceptions. And against Northwestern, he was dreadful. Completed just over 44% of his passes for only 114 yards. He threw 2 interceptions. If Justin Fields doesn't ball out in this game, he doesn't need to outplay Trevor Lawrence. He doesn't even need to win. He just needs to ball out. It will cement him as the 2nd overall pick in this draft. If he folds again, that honor's going to Zach Wilson. The reality is it's going to be on Fields to elevate Master Teague, to elevate Trey Sermon, to elevate Garrett Wilson, to elevate Chris Olave. Those guys are really good, but let's be honest, they're not great. Fields needs to make them look great if OSU is going to win this game. OSU doesn't have the defense to stop Trevor Lawrence. They've given up 21 points per game. That's the 26th best mark in the nation. Good for them. The reality is, they don't have any superstars on the defensive side of the ball. I like Sevyn Banks, I like Shaun Wade, but I wouldn't call them superstars. Lawrence is going to dominate in this game. It's going to be up to Fields to keep up. If he folds in this huge game like he's folded in other big games, OSU has no chance. I am going to pick Clemson. I do think they're the better team. But I want to say this. I think it's going to be a close game. I do think Justin Fields is going to have a great game. He knows what's on the line here. This guy had a stranglehold on the 2nd overall pick not that long ago. Then Wilson started to emerge, and Fields had bad games against the Hoosiers and Wildcats. That caused his stock to dip a little bit. Let me tell you, there's a sizable percentage of people that have Zach Wilson ahead of Justin Fields. As of right now, I have Fields over Wilson, but a bad game by Fields here will change that ranking. But again, Fields knows what's on the line. I do think he's going to have a great game. Not enough to lift the Buckeyes to victory, but enough to cement him as being the 2nd overall pick in this coming draft. Moving on now to the Peach Bowl. That features Cincinnati going up against Georgia. When you look at the Bearcats, you see one of the most exciting quarterbacks in the nation. Desmond Ridder can get it done with his arm. He's completed over 66% of his passes this year for over 2,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. But he can also get it done with his legs. He has over 600 rushing yards this year. He's averaged over 7 yards a carry. And he has 12 rushing touchdowns. In a game where Jared Dokes isn't going to be 100%, he's dealing with an ankle injury, it's going to be on Ritter to carry most of the load. And I think he's capable of doing that. The thing that Ritter does that I love is he spreads the ball around. 8 different Bearcats have caught at least 12 passes this year. Georgia isn't going to know who to key in on. Josh Weil, Jason Jackson, Alec Pierce, Michael Young, Trey Tucker, Leonard Taylor, and Jordan Jones are all capable of big plays. And defensively, Cincinnati has one of my favorite defensive players, Myjai Sanders. The guy has 7 sacks and 5 pass deflections. I'm pretty sure he's draft eligible. It wouldn't surprise me if he went very high in the draft. Also, Cincinnati has had 7 different players make an interception. Ahmad Gardner, Kobe Bryant, Jarrell White, Darian Beavers, Derek Forrest, Arquan Bush, and James Wiggins. JT Daniels is going to have a tough time throwing the ball in this game. Will he still get his? Yes. Daniels has come in and has revitalized a dormant Georgia offense. Stetson Bennett wasn't getting the job done. Daniels looks great. He's completed 2/3 of his passes, 9 touchdowns, only 1 interception, spreads the ball around really well. If Georgia had started JT Daniels from week 1 on, it's very interesting to think about where they'd be in the rankings. It's very possible that they could have upset Alabama and/or Florida. Daniels has been that good. Zamir White also is really good. He's averaging over 5.5 yards per carry, and he has 10 touchdowns. Defense is Georgia's calling card, though. Azeez Ojulari, Jermaine Johnson, Adam Anderson, Channing Tindall, Eric Stokes, Richard LeCount III. These are all sensational defensive players. Desmond Ritter hasn't faced anyone like those guys I just mentioned. But you know what? I think he's up to the task. I don't see Daniels coming in and winning this bowl game when he's only played in 4 games the past 2 seasons. It wouldn't stun me if Georgia won. Georgia is the favorite for a reason. They're a very good team. But I think Cincinnati can pull off the upset. I think they have the players for it. I think they have the coach for it in Luke Fickell. I'm going with the upset here. I went chalk in the CFP, which killed me to do, but in the Peach Bowl, I'm going with the upset. Give me the Bearcats. Moving on now to the Fiesta Bowl. That features Oregon taking on ISU. This is a very un-Oregon-like team. They're not as great offensively as they usually are. Tyler Schuff is a good quarterback. I like watching him play. But he's being a little overrated. He's not at the Marcus Mariota level. This guy's completed just over 62% of his passes for 1,480 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Can he run the ball? Yeah. He can run it well, but not great. He's not a bad player, but he's not great. There are some people, when they talk about this kid, they go gaga over him. I just don't see it. And it's not worth talking about any of the Ducks' pass catchers because none of them are really superstars. Defensively, Oregon has some good players. Like I said, very un-Oregon-like. Kayvon Thibodeau, Noah Sewell, Jamal Hill, Mikhail Wright, Isaac Slade. This is a Ducks team that can win games by shutting down their opponent's offense. Usually they had to win 51-48 games. It's a welcome change for the Ducks. This isn't Justin Herbert's team anymore. I'll say that. As for ISU, they are the better team from the top down. Matt Campbell is one of the best coaches in the nation, and I wouldn't mind him on the Jets for a second. Brock Purdy has had a really good season. He's completed 2/3 of his passes, 18 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. He can get the job done, but Breece Hall is really who you need to key in on for the Cyclones. Hall has over 1,400 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns. It wouldn't surprise me if in a year or two we were talking about this guy in the same way that we talked about Saquon Barkley, Leonard Fournette, and Todd Gurley. How high could he go in the NFL draft? His ceiling is Barkley-esque. It really is. When Purdy throws the ball, you can expect him to get it to one of two guys. Xavier Hutchinson, one of the most underrated receivers in the nation, 60 catches for 726 yards and 4 touchdowns, or Charlie Kolar, one of the best tight ends in the nation, 39 catches for 538 yards and 6 touchdowns. Defensively, there are a few guys that you need to key in on for the Cyclones. Will McDonald, Jaquan Bailey, and Mike Rose are all really talented defenders. The reality is the Ducks can't match the talent that the Cyclones have. ISU is favored by 4.5 points. Give me the Cyclones in that game. I think this could be a double-digit victory for them. The last bowl game to talk about is the Orange Bowl. That features UNC versus Texas A&M. UNC is led by the presumptive best quarterback in the 2022 draft, Sam Howell. It's kind of interesting to think about where he could go if he was draft eligible this year. He's completed just over 69% of his passes for over 3,300 yards, 27 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. I love watching Sam Howell play. He is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch, and I'm going to be very interested to see what he does next year. Having said that, he has some fantastic skill position players helping him out. Javonte Williams has 157 carries this year for 1,140 yards and 19 touchdowns. Michael Carter has 156 carries for 1,245 yards and 9 touchdowns. You can't get any better than that. This is the best running back duo in the nation. And you combine that with Daz Newsome, not Dyami Brown. He's sitting out this game to prepare for the draft. How do you stop the UNC offense? Mac Brown has done a sensational job. The Tar Heels have averaged 43 points per game this year. That is the 6th best mark in the nation. Defensively, they have a couple guys who you really need to key in on. Chaz Surratt, the Foxes, Jeremiah Jamel. But it's more about the offense. They are absolutely electric. As for the Aggies, Kellen Mond seems to be settling into that day 3 range as a drafted quarterback. You thought maybe, just maybe, with a great senior year, he could vault into first round consideration. That really hasn't happened. I think he will be a backup in the NFL for a while, but not a starter. Mond has had a good season, though. He's completed 63.5% of his passes for over 2,000 yards. He's thrown 19 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. He also has some good skill position guys helping him out. Isaiah Spiller is a very underrated running back. Jalen Weidermeyer is one of the best tight ends in the nation. He's leading the Aggies in receiving yards, catches, and he's tied for the lead in touchdowns. Aeneas Smith and Chase Lane are a solid wide receiver duo. Defensively, they have a few guys who you can look out for. Bobby Brown III, Michael Clemens, Aaron Hansford, and Leon O'Neal Jr. But this is another upset to me. A lot of people are picking the Aggies, but I think UNC has the better players. Sam Howell is better than Kellen Mond. Javonte Williams and Michael Carter are both better than Isaiah Spiller. Daz Newsome is better than Jalen Weidermeyer, Aeneas Smith, and Chase Lane. Chaz Surratt and the Foxes are better than guys like Brown, Clemens, Hansford, and O'Neal. I don't think we're going to be saying gig 'em on the evening of January 2nd. I think we're going to be saying this is why the sky is Carolina blue. Give me the Tar Heels. Before I let you go, I just want to say a few other words. This is the last episode of the Jacob Valk Show for 2020. Thank you so much for sticking with me through everything. You couldn't pick a worse year to start a sports talk podcast than 2020. For 4 months, there were no live sports to talk about. You have no idea how hard it was to come up with content that would entertain you. And you have no idea how happy it made me to see the growth that the podcast had even during the dead times in sports. Who knew that this day in sports history and Mount Rushmores could be so entertaining? I also want to thank you for sticking with me through my growth as a podcast producer. I mean, very early on in this podcast's existence, the audio was overmodulated. It really didn't sound as good as it does now. Even when I fixed that, there were still some issues in editing that I had to get sorted out. You stuck with me through all of that. It means the world to me that you cared enough about my opinions on the latest and greatest in sports that you overlooked those technical difficulties. I mean, there were shows I did on a lavalier mic and a DSLR camera. Not exactly the most professional of methods to use, but we made it work. And again, you look past it, which speaks volumes to your character. You look past the cacophony of sound that would be in the background of these shows early on. You have no idea how hard it was to find a contractor that could turn this room into a professional recording studio. If you were to look at a side-by-side of what this room looked like 365 days ago to what this room looks like now, you'd say it's not the same room. The TLC that went into this room is incredible. Some of the walls were painted. There's now adequate temperature control. There's soundproofing up the wazoo. There's memorabilia. You stuck with me through all of it. I can't tell you how much that means to me. It would have been very easy for you to say, oh, there's no sports. Why would I listen to a sports talk podcast? This audio isn't as good as someone like Joe Rogan or Adam Carolla or someone like that. Why would I listen? The fact that you cared that much about my opinions means the world to me. It makes all the work that I do for this show worth it. To see the over 3,000 listens that I get and the 1,000 subscribers that I have on YouTube. You have no idea all the late nights I've had in preparing for and recording this show. There were some nights that I would stay up until 3, 4, even 5 o'clock in the morning, recording and editing. I did it for you. Yes, you. The person on the other end of the speaker who cared enough to stick with me through all the craziness that happened this year. That cared about my opinions on the latest and greatest in sports. That liked my exclusive interviews. Over 300 episodes of this podcast have been posted. Here's to 300 more. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for listening to this show. You make everything that I do worth it. I wish you nothing but the best in 2021 and beyond. Let's put it this way. Your 2021 can't be any worse than your 2020. New York Jets Instant Recap comes your way right after the Patriots game, January 4th. 3 shows. Brooklyn Nets in the morning. Regular episode of the Jacob Valk Show in the afternoon. Probably just football, much like today. Although January 4th will include a Black Monday recap. And in the evening, New York Jets offseason preview. January 11th, you're going to get a New York Islanders season preview. You're not going to get an NHL preview. The way they're doing the playoffs this year, I don't think it's conducive to a season preview. January 18th, Brooklyn Nets. January 25th, New York Islanders, etc., etc. I wish you nothing but peace, prosperity, and good tidings in 2021 and beyond. Thank you so much. May God bless you. Until the new year, I am Jacob Valk saying that I just saw Steve McQueen in The Magnificent Seven. He must have done that one before he died.